So this morning I thought I would read from the Book of Rinzai, or the Rinzai Roku, a couple of chapters, Chapter 3 and Chapter 11, which I think give sort of the quintessential of feeling of Zen Master Rinzai, or Lin Chi in Chinese, the 9th century Chinese monk who is the founder of our lineage. So, Chapter 3, in the section titled Ascending the High Seat. Ascending the high seat, the Master said, "From your lump of red flesh there is a true person without rank, who is always going out and coming in through the face. If you have not yet testified to this fact, look, look." Then a monk came forward and asked, "What about this true person without rank?" The Master got down from the seat, grabbed him, and said, "Speak, speak!" The monk was going to say something, whereupon the Master pushed him away and said, "The true person without rank, what a piece of shit!" The Master then returned to his quarters. Chapter 11. The Master addressed the monks saying, "Nowadays, those of you who practice Buddha Dharma need to have true insight. If you have true insight, you will no longer be tainted by life and death, coming and going. You will be free to go or stay. Though you don't seek that which is excellent will come to you all by itself. Followers of the way, outstanding ancient teachers, all had their own methods to liberate people. In the case of this mountain monk, all I want to point out to you is that you must not be deluded by others. If you want to act, just act. Don't ever be intimidated. You students nowadays don't get it. What is the disease? The disease is lack of confidence. If your faith is insufficient, you will keep on wandering in confusion. No matter what the circumstances, you will be controlled and led around by others. You will not find true freedom. If you can stop your continuously seeking mind, then there will be no difference between you and the Buddhas and ancestors. Would you like to know the Buddhas and the ancestors? They are none other than those of you right now in front of me listening to the Dharma. Because you students of Dharma don't have sufficient confidence in yourselves, you search outwardly. Even if you find something through seeking externally, that something is merely a description in written words. You will never get the vital spirit of the Zen ancestors that way. Make no mistake, virtuous Zen students, if you don't meet this right now, you will transmigrate the 3 realms for 10,000 kalpas and thousands of lives, led by your preferences, to be reborn probably as a donkey or a cow. Followers of the way, according to this mountain monk's view, we are not different from Shakyamuni. Is there anything you lack in your everyday activities? The 6 rays of divine light never cease shining. If you can understand in this way, then you will just be a person of buji. Literally translated means no action. You will be a person of buji throughout your life. So Rinzai was pretty famous for being rather gruff and playful, irreverent, direct, and fairly intolerant of anything that wasn't straight up. So it gives Rinzai Zen a little bit of a sort of martial or samurai feel, and there's something pretty male about it. But it's really quite playful and imagining, if you will, kids tumbling down a hill, play wrestling, something like that, where no harm is really done, and yet you might get a few scuff marks. For Westerners, it's a little tough listening to Rinzai Zen and his escapades, because we think, oh my goodness, if that happened to me, I might feel so shamed or diminished or compromised in some way. And in these stories, I don't believe that's what was going on, but we as a culture, and for some good reasons, are pretty sensitive, and I can't go around pushing and kicking and hitting people in the way that Rinzai did. I'd get in all kinds of trouble, and it would be totally ineffective anyway. So Rinzai Zen in today's world has to be different. On the other hand, examining Rinzai and understanding that it's really more like kids tumbling down a hill together, it can be very helpful to break through our own shell of doubt and shame and thinking that somehow we don't have what we already have. In yesterday's Teisho, we heard Zen Master Mumon say that we are to kill the Buddha and the ancient Zen masters. And what he means by that is that we're to realize that we're already them. That the way to kill them is to realize something of our own deep nature and know that, as Dogen would say, our nose is vertical, just like all the ancient masters, and our eyes are horizontal, just like all the ancient masters and sages of any tradition, in any culture, in any time. And that we have direct access to true insight and have all the wisdom and all the compassion that we could ever hope for or want is already directly accessible from our own heart-mind. This is the good news of Buddhism, and it is what kills the Buddha and the patriarchs and the ancestors and the sages and it just says we're not separate. We have the same access that they had, and it's not limited to saints or sages or bodhisattvas or Buddhas. That everyone around this room right now listening to this discourse is equally capable of having true insight, is equally capable of manifesting care and compassion and wisdom. Everyone here is equally capable. Now, we may not be all equally free in that capability, and indeed there is something called maturity, where we can become more flexible and more free at accessing our own depth and expressing it in effective caring ways in the world. We could become more effective at that. I'm working on it, and everybody else in this world is working on it, and the sages and the ancestors and the saints and the bodhisattvas and the Buddhas were working on it too. There's no arrival, and wherever we are, we're just beginning. If we were practicing the violin or something, we start out making pretty scratchy sounds. But if we practiced every day, slowly our skillfulness would improve. If we're starting this late in life, maybe we would never be virtuoso of world class. But it doesn't matter where we begin. We could always have improvement as long as we've got any dexterity and some mental acuity. We could improve. And everybody in this room wouldn't be sitting zazen unless we had some dexterity and some mental acuity. So there's room for improvement, and we're all on this path of improving our skillfulness at dipping into our deep, true nature, accessing our own true insight, and learning how to express it effectively through loving kindness in our daily lives. That's what we're all about. That's what makes us followers of the way. And it doesn't matter how many years of practice we put in it, we're always just beginning. One of the things I just loved about my ordination teacher, he had lots of flaws, we all do, but one thing that just shined so brightly was that every year he would seriously sit down and give a teisho and say, "Just now I'm beginning to understand." And he'd be very enthusiastic about that because really he truly felt as though he was just starting to see things in a new way and putting the pieces together in a new way and was having new insight. And that freshness of constantly being able to take the old material and rework it and see it and reshape it and see it in a new way and learn some new things from it and have his own insights about it and then share it with others was one of the things that was so attractive about him. So here Zen Master Rinzai is telling us, from your lump of red flesh, each one of us is a lump of red flesh sitting on a zafu this morning, is the true person. In other words, he's using this word true person to represent the deep self, capital S self, or you could even say the no self, because when you get that deep, you've dropped the barriers between so-called self and other, subject and object, life and death, and transcended right and wrong. And you're down there in the deep, deep waters that we all share together. And when you're tapping with your own insight or your awareness, those deep waters, you are the true person who is beyond rank or post. In other words, beyond attachment of needing to have enough or needing to have more or needing to have rank or position or status or needing to have things, needing to have ideas, needing to have people, needing to have all these needs that come out of the hungry ghost superficial aspects of ourselves have been, at our depth, they're quite transcended. It doesn't mean that the surface isn't there, but when we're in communion with our own depth, it so overwhelms our superficial ego attachments and hungry ghost aspects that indeed everything looks pretty beautiful, and we see our way clear through all our trials and tribulations a lot like a knife through warm butter. When we're in communion with our own depth, everything seems pretty easy, not too difficult. And we see what's in front of us and what needs doing, and we do it from a loving, open-hearted, caring position. One that requires almost no effort because we're not losing anything by giving everything when we're in touch with our own depth. So he says, indeed, going in and out of our face, which is to say that it's in our face. You can see it in your face or somebody else's face. It's there all the time. We just don't always see it. Sometimes we only see a glimpse of it, that depth. But it's there. It's always there. We're not always seeing it. Sometimes we see ourselves caught in our own attachments, or caught in our own repulsions, or caught in our own narrow, egoistic state of delusion of sense of separateness. And you'll see anxiety and worry and concern and shame and anger, all kinds of things possessing our face. On the other hand, when we have a sense of communion or awareness of our own depth, you're going to see on your face a gentleness, open eyes, a caring attitude, a loving acceptance, a lightness of spirit. It's the same face. Sometimes you see the depth and sometimes you don't. I like the jingle very much. Sometimes I feel like a nut and sometimes I don't. Indeed, that's exactly right. And I think we're probably all going to identify with that. Sometimes you feel like a nut and sometimes you don't. Sometimes you feel this depth and sometimes you don't. So going from your lump of red flesh, there is this depth that's completely beyond any kind of attachment to rank or position or post or wanting to get ahead, who is always coming through your face, in and out of your face, all the time. If you have not yet testified to this fact, if you have not yet experienced the truth that that depth is already there, Rinzai says, look, look! And that, for that day, was the extent of his teisho. That was the extent of his teisho. And then there was a bit of a dialogue where a monk comes forward and says, what about this true person without rank? Say more. The master demonstrated more by getting up from his seat, grabbing the monk, shaking him, and saying, speak, speak! Well, with Rinzai looking at you like that, shaking you, this monk wanted to say something but hesitated. And Rinzai pushes him away and says, this true person without rank, what a piece of shit. Well, we may be lumps of red flesh, but we're also a pile of shit sitting around here. Every one of us is a pile of shit, and every one of us is Buddha. And this is something that we have a hard time with, realizing that we're a pile of shit and we are all Buddhas. We would like to be, I think, would either like to be a pile of shit or we would like to be Buddha. We really have trouble being both at the same time. And it's something we have to get used to. It's very hard to get used to. It's very hard to get used to find real acceptance around this. That we're all a pile of shit, and that we're directed by our need for shit, and that on occasion, and other times we are just glorious, saintly Buddhas, and it's inside the same package. And it's always going in and out of our face. Rinzai doesn't say any more. What's done is done. The monk hesitated. He's given his teisho, he returns to his quarters. This is Rinzai's spirit. All right. He gives us a little bit more in chapter 11. This whole book is like this. He says, nowadays, those of you who practice Buddha Dharma. Now, this is back in the 9th century, but one of the things about any good text, I don't care where you read it, any good, especially spiritual text, is that you should be able to read it today, even though it was written centuries or a millennium ago, and say, God, that just speaks to me today. And I think this has this quality, very much has this quality. Those of you who practice Buddha Dharma need to have true insight. In other words, we need to have access to our own depth. And when we're in communion with our own depth, Genki Roshi, my ordination teacher, would say, true insight just bubbles up. It's like a spring. You don't. It isn't something that you have to cultivate, or that you have to make happen, or that you have to dig. It just bubbles up. And what is true insight about? Well, true insight can be as simple as, I remember where I put my keys, or true insight can be as profound as insights as Einstein asking what would it be like to ride a beam of light, and then sketching out on a napkin, literally, the special theory of relativity one day. That was an example of true insight that changed physics forever. Or Mozart or Bach or Beethoven write a piece of music. It's just like, whoa, where did that come from? This is examples of true insight. John Lennon was asked, where do you get the songs? And he said, well, they just come up. They just bubble up. Exactly. This is an example of true insights. If we're not having true insights, we haven't gotten awareness or communion with our depth very recently. When we are open to something beyond ourselves, to feeling ourselves connected, seamlessly connected to something vast and boundless, when we have that sense of communion, then true insights on what needs doing and how to do it in an effective, caring, compassionate way just bubbles up. When you're in that kind of condition, you will no longer be tainted by life and death. In other words, when you're open to your own vastness, you can't be too worried about the fact that each one of us is a little teeny ripple on top of a vast ocean. And boy, ripples come and go very, very quickly. But from the ripple's perspective, it might be concerned about that. From the ocean's perspective, there's no concern about that whatsoever. We need to shift from a ripple perspective to an oceanic perspective. And when we are in our oceanic perspective, we have no fear of death. That's just completely true. And he goes on to say, though you don't seek that which is excellent, that which was excellent will come to you all by itself. And there's another phrase that says, in the readiness of times, things will come together. For 20 years, the Zen temple in Seattle struggled to have a property of its own. And then, when things were right, in other words, the Sangha, the community, the leadership was in a place where it could really handle it, it just all came together like that. And when we built our new temple, and now we own a whole apartment building and half a block in downtown Seattle, again, it just all came together when everything was ready. That which is excellent comes all by itself. It's not even something you feel like you have to work at. When it's in the readiness of time, all the parts that are necessary come together. And you start noticing this more and more, the more we're in touch with our own depth. Followers of the way, outstanding ancient teachers all had their methods to liberate people. In the case of this mountain monk, the point I want to make out for you is just don't be deluded by others. He's saying don't be deluded by me. Don't be deluded by me, this me. Don't be deluded by the historical Buddha. Don't be deluded by the ancient masters or sages or bodhisattvas or writings of any kind. Come to rely on your own true insight. Come to rely on your own deep communion. Come to rely on your own access to your own depth. That's the summation of Rinzai's way to liberate people, is don't rely on somebody else to give you the truth. Don't expect that somebody else can give you communion. Don't expect that you have to go out and seek that which is excellent. Just sink deeply into your own true nature. Have some repeated realization of that through your own communion with your own vastness. Shift perspective regularly from the ripple to the oceanic view, or from the leaf to the tree view. And everything starts to come together. The more time we spend in that oceanic view, the more time that things come together and we have insight and we are caring and open-hearted in our daily life. So just don't be deluded by others. And then, if you need to act, just act. If it's appropriate not to act and not say anything, then just don't act and don't say anything. Is there any formula for that? No, but you can have true insight about that. We can all have true insight about when to act and when not to act, and then follow and trust our insight. Once in a while, our insight will be off. It too has to be tested. But more than likely, like 90% of the time, your insights are right on, and learn how to trust them. And also learn that you have to test them in life. And if you're in that 10% where you've had a great insight, but it's just not how the world is working, learn from that. Don't ever be intimidated. Eshu and I wear more fancy robes, and when you're down in the Doksan room, there are all these bows, and in a way, Rinzai's gruffness and all the ritual and form, especially for leadership, is a setup to poke at your own intimidation of authority or hierarchy. It's to poke at it, so that you can get beyond it, not so that you can run away from it, not so that you can annihilate it, but so that you can get beyond being intimidated by it. It's a setup to invite you to get beyond your own intimidation of about anything. But a lot of times we have intimidation and it starts out with our parents. We think of our parents, whether they're terrible parents or great parents, we think of them as gods. And then we think of our teachers as gods, and then we think of the Zen masters as gods. And what a mistake. We keep learning in each successive place, they ain't gods. And there's not even anything special about them. All of them are piles of shit and Buddha. And don't ever be intimidated means we have to get past our own hungry ghost, which is very interested in ranking and who's on top and who's ahead and who's on top of the hill and who has more. And it's all a part, it feeds into our Western sense of the rat race. And Rinzai is saying, cut through this, cut through this, cut through this, cut through this. Don't ever be intimidated. You students nowadays don't really get it, though. What is the disease? What is the dis-ease? The disease is lack of self-confidence. If your faith is insufficient, now this is faith in your own depth. If your faith in your own depth is insufficient, you will keep on wandering in confusion. And no matter what the circumstances, you'll end up being pushed around and controlled and led by others. You won't find freedom, and that doesn't sound very good. Good. He's telling you, watch out. Watch out. If you don't have faith in your own depth, look. This is the room, the laboratory in which to cultivate faith in our own depth. There is no other reason to be in this room but to access and develop faith in our own depth. Otherwise, we keep wandering around in confusion. Otherwise, circumstances will just push us around and we'll be controlled and led around by others, and we will have no sense of freedom. However, if we can stop continuously seeking outside of ourselves, then there will be no difference between you and the Buddhas and the sages and the ancestors of any tradition at any time, in any culture, on any planet. Would you like to directly know and meet the Buddhas and the ancestors? They are none other than those of you now listening to me. We, sitting in this room, in this semicircle, are the Buddhas and ancestors. It's also true we're bags of shit. But right sitting here looking across from each other, you're looking at the Buddhas and the ancestors. We are them. We are that edge of the biosphere. Hey, they're gone. We are them. They're dust. We are them. Because you students of the way don't have enough confidence or faith in your own depth, you continue to search outwardly. Even if you find something through seeking externally, that something will end up just being a mere description or words. When you find someone who gives you Bible quotes or Dharma quotes, and that's all they can give you, is Bible quotes or Sutra quotes or Dharma quotes or Sufi quotes or Torah quotes or something. All they can do is give you quotes. Where is their true insight? Quotes, formulas, sutras will fail you. Your depth won't. Your depth, you can learn that your depth can be relied upon to make us free, generate true insight, and a compassionate, open heart. Even if you find something, it'll be merely a description or not words. You'll never get the vital spirits of the sages that way. Make no mistake, virtuous students of the way, if you don't meet this, the sounds of the birds singing, the warmth of the sun, the taste of the delicious food, the three-dimensional breath. If you don't meet this right now, you will transmigrate in the three realms for 10,000 kalpas. Now, a kalpa is about the length of the universe. So 10,000 kalpas is a long time. Living thousands and thousands of lives led around by our preferences. Our preferences are concerning right and wrong and like and dislike and life and death When we're directed by our fear of death or our love of life, or we're directed by what we like and what we dislike, we'll find that our life is actually becoming narrower and narrower. And if you're really just going to be limited to what you like and dislike, as you follow those two things, you'll end up finding yourself in a cocoon somewhere, never willing to come out. Followers of the way, according to this mountain monk's view, we are not different from the historical Buddha of the Shakya clan. Is there anything we lack in our everyday activities? Please realize that the 6 rays of divine light never cease shining right from your face. If you can understand in this way, you will just be a person of Buddhi throughout your life. What is a person of Buddhi? We go to Hakuin here. He says, page 29, not 2 and not 3 strayed, ahead runs the way. We never leave home, our thought now being no thought, our action now being no action, our dancing and our songs are the voice of the Dharma. How vast and wondrous the boundless samadhi, how bright and transparent the moonlight of wisdom. What is there outside of us? What is there we lack? Nirvana is openly shown to our eyes. This world right now, where we stand, is the pure lotus land. And this very body is the body of the Buddha. This is common sense when we're in touch with our depth. And when we're not in touch with our depth, it seems very, very foreign and far away, like a treasure in a chest at the bottom of the ocean. Let go of our preferences, let go of our desire for rank, post, and position, let go of even our life. Sink into our depth, into the deep depth of a bottomless ocean. And from that perspective, this is how the world already is, because it is already that way. It's also a world of suffering and trauma and destruction. Yeah, it is all of that and all of this at once. And when we're aware of our depth, it can all be held and embraced, and we can act from where we are as Buddha from where we are. And our local action of acting as Buddha from where we are has a ripple effect across the world and across generations. So this is a pretty important laboratory that we come to. We spent a few days sitting and cultivating our faith in our own depth.